Fantastic. Thank you, Carla. Thank you, everybody, and welcome. So we've got 40 minutes, which is a ridiculously short amount of time, and it is the day after the conference dinner, and we've had nothing but kind of stuff at us all morning. What is it that you want to get out of today? What is it that you want to hear from? Because you've been given such a lot of description about what this session is about. You've been using my microphone because we're video. Oh, okay, we're video. Yeah, I'll just use the handheld. Great, excellent. I'll just use the handheld. So, what do you guys want out of today? What do you want? Yes.
How to have people who live in a place connect with the planners who want to do stuff in the place.
Great.
How do you bring that up?
Okay, excellent. So connecting people with the people who are actually doing the planning.
So that they're both talking the same language. Okay, maybe not the same language, but at least sharing ideas.
Okay, yep.
And how they maintain those partnerships or relationships beyond that first discussion.
Yep, excellent.
And maybe how you convince decision makers to allow those people to actually have control.
To have some say as well. Okay, so they sound like three pretty big things. Shall we go? I'll structure it around that. I don't think that's a problem. Okay. Yeah, no, that sound happens periodically.
It's actually drilling.
Yeah, it's a pump or something. Okay, so placemaking and community engagement, I reckon, is a match made in heaven. And I think that if we just first of all look at placemaking, because I think that there's a lot of different kind of definitions for what placemaking means, and certainly the word placemaker is used, and placemaker and place manager have been used interchangeably, etc. In this instance, I'm thinking of engagement activities which are based in the physical space and are around particular places. And ideally, where you're actually building up the relationship that a community or the users of that space have with that space. And that relationship, I don't just mean the people planning, power people relationship, I also mean the relationship that the people have with that place, how they use that place, how they view that place, how they value that place. And by having those emotions and that connection with that place, how they in turn then make connections with each other. So that kind of placemaking thing for me is fairly magic. And I think that placemaking and community engagement are absolutely sort of joined at the hip. So I've got together a little bit of a presentation in which I want to talk to you about how we can actually view the physical spaces that we plan for and the people that will use them or that we want to use them in different ways. And anybody who knows me knows that my favourite part of engagement is the design of engagement. And so I just want to preface this by saying, in my practice I've learned some things, and I tell this story often. I reckon I spent the first 10, Jill Hannah's not in the room, is she? I spent the first 10 years of my career doing really, really fabulous community engagement that informed absolutely nothing because I wasn't asking the right questions. And I can remember this light bulb moment when I was, doing that final proofread of a report before I put it up to Gilliana to do the QA as the project director, and realising there was nothing in that report that we hadn't already known. And that was because we had not asked the right questions. So way back, I really want to talk to you today about the creativity and the activity stuff, but what I just want to preface that with is community engagement needs to be purposeful, and you need to be very clear about what your purpose is. So to your point about why should people do this stuff, it all gets down to that thing of what is it that we want from engagement? What is negotiable and what is not negotiable? Where is the power and where is the power not? Because that clarity is very important. And once you've actually got your purposes of engagement, then you can look at the people that you need to engage with. Then you can design the activities that are actually appropriate for those people to achieve those purposes. So I'm assuming that those building blocks have all been done by the time we come to start talking about placemaking activities. Does that kind of make sense? If you do that process, then you would just have to add 2 other little bit of magic gold. You can set some goals, and that means you can evaluate. So you therefore have your bulletproof planning, if you like, around robust and rigorous community engagement. So what we have here is, we have an intersection, and it's just been chalked up. Like, there's nothing expensive or fancy that's happened here. It's just been chalked up and some flowers have been stuck on it. And the reason I put this up was because I want us as engagement practitioners to think about places from really different perspectives. And I think we know that some of the hardest conversations we have with people are around planning and future stuff. People struggle to imagine a future different. It's really, really easy to say what's wrong now. It's very, very hard to say what could be or what could be changed. And I think that one of the things that we have a real opportunity to do as engagement practitioners is to really release some creativity around looking at places in a different way. So chalking up a daggy intersection is just a really different approach. And how you go about developing that design could be through a number of things. You could have done it through a partnership with school kids. You could have done it through a partnership with local TAFE. You could have gone to local homeless kids. You could have gone, there's a number of ways that you could come up with this process before you even get there, which starts the conversation, which starts the trust, which starts the relationships, and those things that we know needs to occur. How do you pitch the importance of engagement to decision makers, particularly for planning and particularly at a local government and at a placemaking level? What we know is that when people are involved in decisions, they are more likely to be accepting and supporting of those decisions. And when they're involved in the actual design and shaping of places, how they then use those places and care for those places afterwards really shifts. And I remember years and years ago, oh, Jill Hannaford is in the room. Hello, Jill. I was just telling everyone what excellent work I have always done. Another fabulous project I worked on when I was working with Jilly was at the Werribee swimming pool. This is when I learned that there are 3 things you can't close in a community. You can't close a hospital, you can't close a school, and you can't close a swimming pool. But in the process of the Werribee swimming pool, a woman came up and she told this story about how the council had a very small amount of money, but they had some money to spend on a local park, and they just literally come to the local precinct group, this neighbourhood, they letterbox people. The local community had helped design the park, but more importantly, they helped to actually build parts of that. And she spoke of what the shift that made for her. She said it was really important for her to be taking her kids to that park and knowing that that was the paling that she'd hammered in, because she'd never hammered anything before in her life. But what it also meant was that there was no graffiti or vandalism of that park anymore, because it was actually owned by the local community who'd done it. So your reason for doing engagement always is about, making better project decisions, etc. But it's often about developing relationships or creating relationship to place, which is going to shift how people are thinking about that place. The other reason you do it is because it's better that you know what people think early than late, because that allows you to do something about it. This is one of my favourite approaches. This is, as you can see, a residential street. It has been turned into a beach. I think it's pretty clearly in North America where they're a long, long way from a beach. But the idea is that people are interacting in that space in a way that was completely not thought of. There's no traffic, it doesn't look like a road, it doesn't feel like a road, and because it's a beach, look at these kids. Those kids are going, woohoo! and they are interacting with their environment and with each other and with people in a totally different way. So for a short amount of time, the possible has, the impossible or the unimaginable has just become possible and real. And so you can now have a conversation with those people about a future that's unimaginable. And so the question for us as practitioners is, how do we leverage this? How do we leverage this enthusiasm and energy and excitement in a way that gets people engaging with us with information that is actually going to inform and create a better project? So how could you do that there without disrupting the activity too much either? So, have anybody got any ideas about what you could do right now? There you go, you got your beach. You got several hundred people, a lot of whom, we know that we don't get lots of this demographic. What could we do? How could we talk to them? Yep.
You do a video vox pop, so you
Beautiful.
could use that then as a promotional thing
Exactly.
for what you did, but you could also use the information for future planning.
So video vox pops, which is really good. We've been using Vimily, which is an app that you put on your phone. And the reason that is really good is because you don't need any equipment. And people, particularly young people, really comfortable speaking to phones, not so comfortable speaking to cameras. And it's really got a high quality and very easy to edit. So $500, $1,000, you've got a 3-minute video of vox pops that you've captured along the day. Perfect. Also really good online. Yep.
The Candy Chan style feedback wall where you can ask a question and people can.
Beautiful.
People who don't want to use technology.
Exactly.
But then everyone can see it as well. So
That's a really excellent idea. And you could almost theme the notes that they put up. You might have buckets and spades and sandcastles that people can write their comments on. Excellent suggestion. Yep.
Maybe like a social media hashtag competition.
Yep.
Tell us X, Y, Z and go into the
Yep, get that
yeah.
digital engagement with the social media hashtag, yes?
You could get the people to create sandcastles of what a particular building could they want it to look like. Maybe a new library or
Yeah, fantastic, exactly. And then you could take photographs of them because they wouldn't be very permanent.
or like the landscape of a particular area.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. I mean, it's a perfect medium, isn't it, for getting people to get their hands dirty. Any other suggestions? None of those suggestions cost a lot of money. I just want to point this out. I think that there's this great mythology that you've got to spend mega bucks and you've got to curate engagement down to the nth degree. And I think that you can do engagement very, very easily and very, very inexpensively. I do suspect it costs a little bit to turn that road into a beach. And one would like to think that something constructive is happening with the sand afterwards. Okay. I love this. I just love this picture, which is in dreadful. This shows how, what a Luddite I am, because I couldn't for the life of me figure out how to get a better resolution. But what you're seeing is a library in the middle of nowhere. I just love this idea. You've just got books. You've just set up books and places for people to sit and they are reading. And again, it's just like if you threw in some texters and pens and paper for kids to draw, you just got this really lovely, low-key, inexpensive, different way to interact with a space. I mean, it's not, look, it's almost an industrial space that they're sitting in. So again, you just have this great opportunity. So just whack up a coffee cart there and, reward people, give us a comment, get a free cup of coffee, and engage people with, so what is it, why are you attracted to coming here, and what is it that this could mean, and how else could we use this space? I just think that that's one of the best ideas I've seen. This is another one, which again is this thing of, reimagining spaces in a different way. We've been working on Anzac Parade, which is a major thoroughfare in Sydney. It's about to have light rail down the middle of it. And trying to get people to imagine a busy thoroughfare in a different way is really hard. This is a really inexpensive, that's just sandbags that they've used to carve out little bits, and they're just pallets. So we're talking again very, very low cost. We're not talking about a lot of infrastructure, but we're demonstrating to people that the environment can be softened very, very easily and very, very readily. Again, an activity like this lends itself to partnership. So it lends itself to partnership with community groups, with neighbourhood precinct groups, with recycling groups. So if there's opportunities to do that skill building, capacity building and relationship building, I think that they're there. And similarly, what are some of the activities you could do here in terms of talking to people?
I think that's stormwater.
Coffee stand.
Stormwater, the coffee stand, yep.
Plant some ideas.
Sorry?
Plant some ideas in the pot plant.
Plant some ideas. That's fantastic.
You should give away plants as well.
Yeah, you could give away plants, that's right. Yeah, exactly. You could just do your good old-fashioned bloody intercept survey.
Yeah, I was going to say just a
Yeah,
short survey.
get your iPad, get
Yeah.
your hard copy. Absolutely.
You could use that concrete wall, you could chalk up the concrete wall.
And you could almost have a different station in each pod. So one of them you might have your chocolate wheel, one of them might have your big giant one with your double one idea, another one might have set up like a bit more of an in-depth conversation, like, you know, with a cafe, and you could actually sit and talk to people for longer. You could almost, and people could choose, you know, how long or that they wanted to stay. Yeah, I really like this one. And of course, you're just bringing in bloody potted plants. It's fantastic. Okay, I love this one. Like, how out there is that? You know? And again, it's just that thing of just get people talking and interacting with the space and challenging how they view. I mean, I think one of the, you know, I love the way we constantly talk about the public domain. I mean, the public domain means, I mean, I don't know about you, but it's never meant anything to me. Public domain and amenity, just,
Yeah.
Vibrant.
sorry?
As long as it's vibrant.
That's right. But the idea of a giant blow-up eyeball, or but anything which just gets people thinking in a different way. And again, you could set up activities around this in terms of prompting people to say, well, what do you think of public art? What is the kind of public art that this city needs? What is, you know, if we were going to put some significant public art in this neighbourhood, what should it be saying? What is the feeling that you want it to evoke? What is the role of public art for communities? You know? Yeah, I love the eyeball. Okay, this is one I put up because, again, it gets back to my, my thing about inexpensiveness. So this is like a salad server from a $2 shop that has been hammered onto a piece of wood. And years ago when we did the Aids Bradbury Out Loud engagement, we worked with a community artist who got a whole lot of recycled stuff, but also just very cheap plastic stuff from the $2 shop. And he worked with the local community, particularly the local women, who were in this very disadvantaged community. And they made these giant totems. And that's how we decorated the site on the day of Aids Bradbury Out Loud. I think that the whole thing cost something like $75 in terms of equipment. But in terms of enlivening the space, but more importantly, what came out of that was an ongoing, it's still going now, craft group in that community of women who come together regularly and spend time together and, you know, sew and craft and knit and what have you. All started by this community art activity, which allowed them to realise that it was possible and that their creativity was was valid and valuable. So I think that there's some really great opportunities for this, and this goes to your lovely plant a tree, plant an idea. You know, people could do that in that way. Oh, okay. I wanted to show you this because, so you might notice I'm not telling you anything about a project that I've done. This is because I personally cannot stand going to conferences and constantly hearing people tell you how wonderful they are. And they never tell you all the times they stuff up, which is when you really learn something. So this is a project that was actually done by Place Partners. Now, Place Partners is a placemaking consultancy in Sydney, of which I had absolutely no affiliation at all. But I saw it and I thought it was a really nice idea. This is in a part of the City of Sydney. It's right down, we're talking down in Struggle Street in the City of Sydney. So this is where homeless people sleep in the evening. It's right kind of in that underneath King's Cross, Woolloomooloo area. They called for people to come down for a working bee to create a mural. And so they put out flyers and advertising and that kind of stuff. And people could just come down and, you know, anybody could come down and work on it. And they did, and that's what they created. And again, it's just that very simple thing of let's change how we view this space and how this space could be used and how we feel about and relate to this space by a very inexpensive, simple activity. So I thought that that was a really good way for us, particularly for local government, to challenge stuff. That is a really good question that I don't have the answer to. But that would be a good question. The question was, how did they engage with the homeless people? I'm pretty sure that they did, though. I love this. Oh. How good is that? It's a water slide. You know, like, how awesome. It's just bloody tarps. It is tarps covering hay bales and a big hose and presumably a drain. But, you know, I just think that that is absolutely awesome. And again, just a really fun way. My first introduction to placemaking like in this way was when I went to Scarborough in England. Has anybody been to Scarborough? Yeah, it's a funny place, isn't it? Like, I think it comes alive in summer. We weren't there in summer. So it's this real English seaside town, isn't it? With that, like, Blackpool or something.
Well, yeah, not quite as thick as Blackpool.
Yeah. It's got some beautiful architecture. But so some really entrenched kind of social issues and high levels of unemployment. And so I think a real kind of mismatch. And they had this really busy street right at the top of the hill. And for a weekend, it was not a very long stretch of street, they closed it off and turfed it and turned it into a park. And that's how they started the community conversation about planning for the future of Scarborough. And I just thought it was such a beautiful, simple idea. And it totally changed how people related. And I think that that's what this does, because this is a fairly joyless kind of environment, you know. And the idea that adults can hop on and go whizzing down a water slide. Look, that person is, you know, pretty much dressed for business. You know, I really like that idea. And some of us, you know, you young people, they didn't have jumping castles when I was little. I've never been on a jumping castle, you know, so I would, at 55, delight in the idea of scooting down a water slide in my work gear. Okay, so this is the Sydney Harbour Bridge. I think that they've done this once or twice.
Yeah,
once.
twice.
Yeah, I've got a feeling it's been done more than Julie from, is Julie still here? One of our award winners. Anyway, So they turfed it, and look, people were able to purchase, and they just opened it for a day of picnics. Now this was around a celebration, I think, of the centenary or something like that at the Sydney Harbour Bridge. But again, it was this really kind of energising way to enjoy the bridge. I mean, this is such a thoroughfare. It's one of the most, I don't know, somebody from the transport will be able to tell me how many, it's like 60 to 100,000 vehicles a day. It's just phenomenal how much traffic this gets on it. And you drive on it, and it's one of those things you want to, I'm a Sydney-sider, and I've always been in love with the bridge since I was a little girl. But there's never any time, like you're driving. And of course you can walk across it, but you're quite distant from the bridge with the walk. You're quite separate. So this is this really fantastic opportunity to just, hang out on the bridge. I really like that. Okay, so I wanted to talk to you about how you could only limit it by your imagination. And I also think that given where we are, and I'm assuming that you're having the same kind of conversations here as we are in Sydney and probably in Melbourne, which is about we've got rapidly changing physical environments, we've got tall buildings going up, there is a concern around a lack of green space, and green walls are all the rage, and roof gardens. And so one of my dreams is that we actually open up some of those roofs. Let's have a park trail where we've got a series of roof gardens open, and maybe you've got a week in one and a week in another, but within an urban environment where people, because what happens there is you totally see your environment from a different perspective. If you're looking out as opposed to looking up, it gives you your whole community from a different perspective. So these are perfect places to seed the conversation about what is possible, what does place mean to you, what is it that we need in our community, what is it that we need in our environment in order for us to have a more fulfilled and fulfilling life, because really that's the essence of what we're after. And I think that through engagement, we really have this opportunity to do it in a really interesting and fun and creative, exciting way. So that's my end of the formal bit. So Sue, you asked about the forming of the relationships and maintaining them in an ongoing way. And it's been really interesting because I don't know how many of you heard Carson this morning, but Carson was talking about growing the deliberation. How are we going for time?
About 10 minutes.
Oh, God, I could talk underwater. She was talking about growing the democracy movement. And so for Carson, it's all about, inclusion and hearing all the voices. And then we heard Shari, and Shari was talking about the participatory budgeting stuff. And there were some elements of Shari's that I quite liked, but the issue, does not the issue always remain? How we get that balance between working with the few and working with the many, and how you don't lose the many in that process so that they still stay engaged. And I think that the challenge for us is around, and one of the things I really liked about Shari's approach was she talked about having change makers, she talked about having champions. So she had a series of different roles that different people could play. And I think that if we think from a governance perspective about our projects across the longer term, we can do two things. I think we can identify roles that are doable and are legible and are practical. But I also think that we can look for and see the opportunities which are around capacity building and skill building and creating. And I loved, the thing I got from, I love that idea that, let's stop thinking about young people as future leaders, let's actually start making them leaders. I thought that was a really lovely option. So I think that it's about how we, and dare I say it, it's the co-creation stuff. It's about the, what is our problem, let's define it together, and what is our solution, let's develop that together.
got time for one or two questions. Anyone got a burning question that they'd always wanted to ask Lucy? Come on, hard one for her. Yes.
So Lucy, I'm working on a 30-year plan for water supply in southeast Queensland, and the challenge for me is that I now know through all the modelling and research we've done that it's 20 years before a decision needs to be made on our next future water source. But I want to take the opportunity of time to enable the community to be part of that decision. So I guess my question is, how do you develop an engagement program that is not for this week, this year, next year, but is for the long term and is about making a decision that will ultimately benefit the next generation, not your own?
Oh, how exciting! How good is that? Because what you got the opportunity to do is to actually model some of those futures. So you could model an arid future, you know, or you could model a future which has, you know, like a high cost, a high energy cost. We got the water, but it's costing us a shitload of money, you know. And you could model real live local sustainability future stuff. So that's the way that I would do it. You know, in fact, you know the way I would do it? I would almost be thinking about it like a World's Fair. Sorry, an expo. They were called World's Fair, an expo. Do you know where they kind of create the countries? Yeah, but think about that spatially. So, you know, and over a period of, so start up a long, slow conversation, you know. So, yeah, that's you know, I think that would be fantastic. And again, I think that the opportunities for partnerships with universities, schools, young people, communities are really strong through that. Exciting. Yes?
I was just interested in your comments around enabling people to think future. We're working on two projects where we're trying to take people into a future of a technology that we don't even know exists yet. Have you had any insights on that in terms of how do you actually take them to that place to sort of say, well, we just don't know what it's going to look like, but it could be this, but it's so unreal that you can't even follow up to that.
Well, is Abby Jeffson in the room? Good. Okay, so the question was, how do you get people to think about a future with a future for technology when we don't even know what that future is going to look like? And I've long had the idea of a time tunnel. Because the thing is, the reality is that and it's not just in a timetable in terms of the future. Rapid change has been with us and has been documented over the last 100 years. So I think that there's countless resources you can draw on. I mean, and the car springs to mind, flying springs to mind, telephones, television, you know, music. You know, you can make little vignettes either, you know, through graphic recording or posters or videos or whatever, which actually show that when somebody had the idea, like when Edison, so I bought an Edison gem recently. That was the first affordable record player. When Edison invented the mechanics for making music, a recorded sound, he never thought of entertainment. He thought it was going to change the business world. And when it wasn't taken up by the business world, when it instead was taken up by entertainment, he stopped developing it, which is why his master's voice, HMV with the dog, got the jump on him. We can't ever imagine where things are going. So I would use those very tangible examples to help free people from the fact that just because we don't know where it's going to go, it doesn't mean that we can't imagine what might happen. There's also something for me in, you know, in that whole thing of planting a flag in the ground, of daring to dream. You know, like I'm a dreadful, you know, I'm 55, I'm getting really cynical and cranky in my old age, you know. But I also, you know, somebody said to me a long, long time ago, you know, if you put something out there into the universe will deliver. You know, and I am, yeah, that's the secret, exactly. And I am not hippy-trippy in any way. But that kind of stuff, there is a real resonance around that stuff. It does help you to kind of, to head towards something, even if you don't know you're heading towards it. Does that help?
Yeah, absolutely.
Got time for maybe one more.
Sorry, this is an observation rather than a question. Thank you, Lucy. I come from Christchurch in New Zealand, and since the earthquakes 5 years ago, there's been a lot of transitional art and events and pop-ups that they're all over the place. And they've really been effective in capturing people's imagination and getting them into empty spaces, which otherwise would have been regarded as dismal or no-go areas. And there's just been lots of cheek around it, and it really has worked. And it opens up people to sort of all sorts of possibilities, and it harnesses people's ideas. And there's been all sorts of mad stuff, but it's amazing who uses them. And they were really cheeky about 4 years ago when Prince Philip and Camilla happened to be in Christchurch. And I don't know how they talked them into it, but they talked them into coming along to what they call a dancer mat, which is a pop-up music thing, and it really is just a square. And all sorts of photographs and film were taken of Charles with some random Christchurch person and Camilla dancing on this thing. And I think people that will go, if they can make a fool of themselves, so can we. And that's still going, the dancer mat.
That Renew Newcastle and that Renew movement, which is about kind of bringing pop-up, creating, turning unused and disused places into opportunities, particularly for artists and local businesses and stuff. And there's such a sense of, it's the whimsy, it's the fun, it's removing the dead, cover your ears around, removing the dead hand of government, and actually, tapping into, that everybody, in reality, we're always looking for a bit of joy, and our instinct is always to laugh before we cry. So there is something about that which allows people to explore, I think.
And people take it back. They take back the ownership of that space, which is wonderful.
And that's the magic. That is the magic. When we did the social sustainability policy for the City of Sydney recently, fantastic response. But what people were saying was they don't want much. What they want is, they want to connect with each other, and they want to be able to use public spaces in different ways to connect with each other. And they want to be part of solving the solutions, like developing the solutions and creating the solutions for the issues and problems in their communities. So I think that we assume, and because we hear a lot of the resistance and the objection and that kind of stuff, we assume that people are going to resist. I think actually people want to be part of making stuff happen. And I think there's an opportunity for us to tap into that. Thank you, Lucy.